Hey there, everybody, and welcome back for the third episode of the drop list or the cut list or drop these dudes, whatever you want to call it. I'm Thunder Dan Palyo, and I'm here to tell you which fantasy basketball players you can cut safely as we head into another week of the fantasy basketball schedule. Today, I'll kind of review the guys we talked about last week, give you some pretty big names today, guys who potentially you can cut as well as some lower owned or lesser owned players you can cut. And if you remember from last week, we introduced a new segment called the hot seat, where we talk about some guys you should monitor, but maybe not cut yet. And then, of course, I have some guys at the end who I think you should be a little more patient with, players who I'm seeing cut or dropped by a lot of teams, or I'm getting a lot of questions about from fantasy players about whether or not they should cut them. And I'm going to preach a little patience with those guys. So that's how kind of things kind of work here. And we'll kind of run down all through all those different spots and talk about, again, the tough decisions that you have to make in order to be able to have some flexibility on your rosters and stream players off of waivers. I went on a big tangent about that last week about how important I think it is to be able to stream players, especially in head-to-head leagues. So having said all that, let's just jump right into it, right? I'm not going to do a big introduction of myself. Last 2 weeks, I just kind of mentioned who I am and where you can find me at Thunder Dan DFS on the X. I'm also been on Reddit a lot, so if you ever go over there, I've been posting some of my content over there, some of my articles, whether it's waiver wire, whether it's the drop list, whatever it might be. We're back for episode 3. As I've been doing, starting each episode with a little bit of a weight loss tip. As I mentioned, I'm kind of in the middle of this weight loss quest of my own, and this one's gonna be kind of personal because I'll be honest, I'm right there with you. We're going to talk today about powering through the plateau. I think it's inevitable in any kind of weight loss quest that you hit a plateau, and especially for me, it was very easy to drop a lot of weight quickly. And then all of a sudden it slows down, right? And if you're someone who maybe weighs yourself every day or once a week, and you're not seeing, hey, I didn't drop a pound, I didn't drop 2 pounds, you're flatlined, you're not losing weight. It could be frustrating. So powering through the plateau for me, number one, part of that is just being patient and remaining consistent and not backsliding and saying, well, I said I've given up, or I lost, I can't lose anymore, right? Might as well start reverting back to my old habits. That's the first step. The second step is figuring out another thing you can do to try to push you through. So if you already cut out the sweets and you've already cut out the snacks and maybe you've started to increase your exercise, what is one more thing you can do that you haven't done yet to push yourself through? So for me, it's probably going to be more exercise because right now it's getting cold in the Northeast here. I'm in Pennsylvania. And for me, it's going to be, increasing my step count, getting out, trying to work out more often. And I think that's going to help me boost through, a lot of the dietary changes I made have made a big impact. But I think I personally need to ramp up the exercise. But whatever it is you need to do to push through that plateau, get through it. You can do it. We're in this together. And hang in there. Just don't give up. Right. I think that's an important message there is push through. And eventually it'll happen. And it'll probably run into another one. You got to keep pushing through those plateaus in weight loss and in life, people, right? I'm teaching life lessons today. All right, let's get to the basketball stuff. Last week we talked about 3 guys specifically, and it was really ironic that CJ McCollum decided he was going to turn the clock back, and I think he had 25 points 2 nights in a row, and then a 42-point outing. I don't care. I thought it was funny. I personally haven't missed him. If you cut him and you felt bad, you shouldn't. He had like 10 points and 2 assists last night. We're going to see a lot more of that. And I'm pretty, staunch in my view of him on the Wizards this year. I don't think it's a situation where he's going to be viable all season. Maybe he's going to have some of these games, but I don't think we're going to see more of those. I think we're going to see a lot more of the bad games and eventually him resting or being shut down or being traded or something. We don't know yet. Anthony Simons had a game or 2 where he had a couple of good assist games, but he's still such a marginal player for me. Now he's up to 14, 2-2, or 15, 2-2, maybe. I don't know. It's such for me, it's such an empty, hollow 15 points that I can find that elsewhere. We talked about that, and we'll continue with that theme with a couple of these players today. So I'm not sweating Anthony Simons. And he also played poorly last night. So I always like to see before I come on the show how did these guys do the night before, good or bad. I will say this: Reed Shepard, I think I probably was a little premature on. When you do content, you're constantly looking for, hey, I need X number of players to recommend to pick up or to drop, whatever. For me, I was like, well, Reed Shepard, no minutes, right? All of a sudden, boom, then there's minutes. He's playing over 20 minutes a night. He's had some really good shooting nights. He had 20 points last night with some mop-up duty against Washington. I may have made a mistake there personally. I love Reed Shepard, and I was hoping that he would have a big season. I still think it's going to be hit and miss a little bit. I mean, it's not, just he's had 3 good games in a row doesn't mean he's guaranteed to continue that. He's still going to be coming off the bench and battling for time, but it does look like if he plays better and making shots, he's going to get a longer leash. Frankly, the Rockets really need him. They need some scoring off the bench. They need some more good guard play, and he does play some decent defense. He hustles out there. I like his game. So if you bailed on Reed Shepard, you can still be trying to go get him. I think he's still only around 33% rostered. If someone else snagged him and you dropped him on my recommendation, sorry, hey, I got that one wrong. But who knows how Reed Shepard is going to end up by the end of the season? Time will tell. All right, let's keep moving. We're going to get into our first drop for the week, and I'm sure I'll get some pushback on this, but I don't see any reason that you should be holding Cam Thomas. I know he's IR eligible, but I personally have never drafted Cam Thomas. We'll never draft Cam Thomas. I'd never want Cam Thomas on my team. And so the fact that he's hurt now for at least a month, I think there are better ways to use your IR slot than on a guy who he's basically like an Anthony Simons type, right? Totally empty scoring. Now, the scoring is significant, right? He's over 20 points a game. I get it. 2 threes. But the volume of shooting at 40% is going to kill your field goal percentage, right? He does help free throw percentage. I know he's up over 85, 86% on decent volume, but he's going to kill your field goal percentage. It's comical how few defensive stats and assists he has. He has 1 rebound a game, right? 2 assists a game, and like 0.6 combined blocks and steals. It's like really bad. So Cam Thomas is just not. I mean, again, I says I'm a broken record. I keep repeating this. I don't want hollow scorers that don't add any other stats on my team. And 9Cat, if you're in a points league and you are holding Cam Thomas, whatever, that's fine. But to me, I think there's better ways that you can use those IR slots on other players who have more upside. A Kobe White, someone like that. If your IR is filling up, because that's what happens with basketball, right? Guys are stacking up with injuries. This is the first guy that you cut, okay? Cam Thomas, I think there's also some motivation questions there. He clearly doesn't want to play in Brooklyn. He, is trying to get out of there. He's on a 1-year deal. What motivation does he have to come back and play? I've heard people say, oh, it's a contract year. Let's put up big stats. I don't even think he cares. I'll be honest with you. His whole demeanor is very nonchalant. He seems checked out to me. I don't know how much he cares this year. He's certainly not going to rush back to the court to a team that is clearly tanking, and that whole situation is not good. So Cam Thomas, cut him, drop him. Don't waste your IR slot on him. This is a guy, next guy, right? Who, man, it's tough to say it, but we've seen, if we come to the end of the Draymond era, and I know, there's always going to be some people who are like, yeah, but the assists, and I understand the assists are scarce, and over 5 assists is still pretty solid. But man, Draymond used to give us more in other categories, and he's really not doing that this year. His minutes are down. His role is kind of been reduced. Golden State is a bit of a mess this year. I'll be honest; they've been blown out a few times, and his minutes have suffered there. His scoring has never been what you rostered him for, but he used to give us at least 6, 7, maybe 8 rebounds a game. His assists would be up over 6. He's still giving us 1.6 threes. That's fine, but that's replacement level. 3 turnovers game is no good. That turnover to assist ratio is not good. It's under 2. So you are getting assists, but at the cost of 3 turnovers. His shooting percentage is way down, 41%. And we aren't getting those defensive stats that we used to get with Draymond. He used to be good for about a steal and a block a game. Now he's giving us 1.3 combined. I think it's like zero point 0.6 and zero point 0.7. So, yeah, Draymond for me, I'm getting a lot of questions about him. And honestly, I feel like you can cut him. I don't see the upside. I think he's going to be capped in the 25 to 28-minute range all season, maybe some rest spots. And I just think there are other guys you can chase with more upside. There's no upside to Draymond Green, right? Is he going to pop off for a triple double randomly some night? Probably. Poor man's triple double, a 10, 10, 10 or something here or there. But honestly, he's been looking very much his age. Great real life player. I saw a question on Twitter the other day about whether he should be a Hall of Famer. Yeah, absolutely. The guy's had a great career, good defender, not a really good guy, right? kind of a jerk on the court, but in terms of his performance for fantasy, I think we can move on. And I'm kind of surprised he's still rostered in 85%. Well, he's probably because of his reputation, not only as a good player, but as a good fantasy player over the years. So there's our second big drop of the week. And then we get to the guy who finally I'm going to cave in and going to give the people what they want. For 2 weeks now, I've been getting questions about Cameron Johnson, and I had said hold and hang in there. Maybe he's on the hot seat last week. Man, it's time. He's done. He's cooked, as the kids say. 73% roster still, and honestly, that's way too high. He got hurt in last night's game. So here's how I'm approaching it. If you don't want to be really mean, and man, you suck, Cam, I'm cutting you. You can say, hey, I'm sorry you got hurt, Cam. That's unfortunate, but we have to get some healthy guys in here. He's hurt. He only played 7 minutes and left the game. That's a great excuse to get rid of him because he has been abysmal, right? Just doing nothing. You can look at his stats. Nothing. No defensive stats. No threes. It's been hard to watch. I totally whiffed on this. I thought he would be much better in Denver. He's not. Here's my take. Keep an eye on him because you never know. He's still probably good at basketball. I don't think he forgot how to play. So maybe he just needs a reset. Maybe this injury sits out for a week or two or something. I don't know how serious it is yet. But maybe he can come back and be a bench player or something. If he comes off the bench in a better role down the stretch, maybe he'll be a guy we re-add at some point. But for right now, the situation is not good. He's not fitting in on the Nuggets. He needs a total reset, and you can safely cut him if you already haven't. A lot of you probably in the comments are going to say, I cut him 2 weeks ago. I cut him last week. That's fine. Hey, I held on as long as I could because I saw the upside of Cam Johnson, and I don't see it anymore. I really don't. It's not a good situation. If you were one of the few people still holding out with me, and apparently there's more than a few people, if he's 73% rostered, you can safely cut Cam Johnson. That movie, unfortunately, is over, right, for him. And again, who knows? We'll see what happens down the stretch. But for now, Cam Johnson to the curb. We had two Cams, right? Kick the Cams to the curb. There's my little wordplay for the day. All right. So those are our three obvious cuts. All right. Here are the guys who I would put on the hot seat, meaning they're getting close, right? They're getting into the cut territory. And it's pretty weird to say that VJ Edgecombe is there, but I think he's there. He had such a dynamic start to the season. He looked so good in those first 2 or 3 games. But if you look at his game log and if you look at his last 7 games, last 5 games, he's been slowly tapering off. And that has a little bit to do with, Embiid playing some more minutes here and there, or them working Grimes back into the rotation, getting Jared McCain back into the rotation. So it's not like they need him to play 35 or 38 minutes a night like those first few games. And also he just, cooled off shooting. Like he was red hot shooting the basketball. I'm still holding on because I do see upside there. He has some nice defensive stats upside. And he's still obviously clearly a very talented young player. So I'm trying to hold. But if you are in a shallower league or you're someone who needs to clear a spot and make room for people to stream, I think he's getting close to that. Probably the next worst player on your team who you can cut. And obviously the situation in Philly could get more complicated if Paul George returns. We'll have to see what happens there. There's a lot of mouths to feed. There's a lot of players there. And Edgecombe is in their long-term plans, but I don't know that he may end up being, a guy that we roster in standard leagues this season if his role continues to be reduced. and he ends up, being in this kind of timeshare on the wing with Oubre and all these other guys. So hang in there a little bit longer, but keep an eye on VJ Edgecombe, see how he tracks. It's not been good the last week or two. The next guy I have is Tobias Harris. Now you might say I have Tobias Harris on the IL, but here's the thing. I mean, what seemed like a relatively minor injury is now dragged on for 2 weeks. Tobias Harris has not played, and I know that they need his shooting on the wing in Detroit, and I know that they like his veteran leadership there. But he is still a fairly marginal player. Let's be honest. This is not the Tobias Harris of 5 years ago. This is the Tobias Harris at the end of his career, who we were hoping to get 12 points and 5 or 6 rebounds, 2 threes from, a couple blocks and steals. We were already kind of having our expectations lowered of what version of Tobias we were going to get this year. But if Tobias continues to sit out, again, if you have an IL spot, that's fine. But I mentioned earlier with Cam Thomas, if you're running out of IL spots and you have to get rid of somebody, I mean, Tobias Harris already is a fairly marginal player. Maybe you get rid of him, right? I mean, we see that Ron Holland is playing a ton there now. We see that they have other guys, younger guys, that can get in the rotation too. So, not that he's going to lose his job, but when he comes back, he's still the third or fourth option on offense. We're seeing the emergence of Jalen Duren. We're seeing Cade Cunningham have a fantastic season. Those guys are going to get their buckets and shots first. Tobias Harris is going to, be a complementary player when healthy, and he just hasn't been healthy. So I would, consider what Tobias Harris has in the cut territory if you need the flexibility on your roster. And the last guy here is Herbert Jones. Herbert Jones is, I mean, I don't have any shares of Herbert Jones. I know there's some people out there like my buddy Vespers who are Herbert Jones fans and like him. Again, everything in the Pelicans situation is so messy right now. He is starting, but he has had some pretty, I wouldn't say crappy, he's pretty bad games lately. He just doesn't do enough other than defensive stats for me. I know there's some upside there with steals and blocks, but he doesn't score. He's not a great shooter. He's not a great rebounder. He's not doing anything really great across the board. And so he's very much in cut territory for me. We have to see what happens when Zion returns. I don't know when that's going to be. We've seen Derek Queen, earn more minutes as off the bench and continue to play well. I would not be surprised if the Pelicans just embrace the youth movement pretty early here and play all those young guys. And, Herbert Jones is not probably a young guy in their future. So we'll see what happens with his minutes. But he's been very marginal. He's just outside the top 150 right now. I think he's around 165, something like that, 9 cat. So, again, if you need the spot, then I wouldn't mind cutting Herbert Jones. If you have him and you don't need to cut him, give him another week, see what happens. But he's certainly not a guy that we're like, that has a lot of upside that we're holding on to, hoping that he turns it around. All right, here are some of my, I call them lightly roster drops. So we're down under the 50% threshold. Jonathan Kuminga almost made the first wave of cuts there. He's been terrible. I don't think there's any reason to be holding him right now. A little bit surprised he's still so highly rostered. He's not even a great fantasy player when he's going strong, right? He's pretty much points and rebounds and some threes. Right now, he's down bad. He can't make a bucket. His minutes are cut. Jonathan Kuminga is an easy cut. He's being dropped in a lot of leagues, and I fully support that. Then we get to the Kings situation, and the Kings have just I talked about it before. The Kings are such a disaster of an organization. I don't really understand what they were thinking when they put together this roster, but they brought in Dennis Schroeder for some reason, right? And installed him as their starting point guard. He's not a great point guard. He has had some good assists this season. He's still up over 6 assists. But, he's in the later half of his career, right? He's not a great shooter. He's not like a true pass first point guard. He doesn't make them better, right? And he's taking away shots and playing time from other guys, especially some other younger guys. Now, lately, he's been trending way down. And last night, they got blown out. They've been blown out here a couple nights in a row. They've been resting guys. Guys are hurt. But it's a mess. I don't have any reason to keep Dennis Schroeder. I don't have any Dennis Schroeder, but I don't see a lot of upside there. And I think we could see the Kings shake things up with their rotation and their playing time. I know they paid him decent money to come there, but yeah, he's clearly not the answer there. And Malik Monk sat out last night. Now, at first, when I'm looking through the box score, I see, coach's decision, and I thought, wow, that's a big deal if he was benched and didn't even play. But and upon further investigation, he does have an ankle injury that kept him out. Here's the problem with Malik Monk. Again, I mentioned him in last week's episode as a guy to, kind of on the hot seat. He isn't doing anything, right? With his minutes, when he is coming in off the bench, he's been scoring a little bit and doing nothing else. Obviously, it's bummer to see because I like Malik Monk as a player, but he's a victim of being in that on a crappy team with a bad role right now and reduced minutes. So no reason to hold Malik Monk, especially he's not healthy too. So you can easily use that as an excuse to cut him. And here's a guy who I really thought was going to have value, at least for the first half of the season. D'Angelo Russell, firmly a cut for me now. In the last week, if you haven't been paying attention, Brandon Williams has taken over as the starting point guard in Dallas and looks good, is giving them some better minutes. Obviously, is more athletic, younger, more dynamic, much better defender, lots of steals, good rebounder. He's just giving them a spark. And obviously, Dallas is another team that's, I would say, a hot mess. We don't know what they're going to do with Anthony Davis. There's rumors of them shopping him and trading him. It's a bad situation. But D'Angelo Russell now, right, goes from what we thought, being the starter on a team that was going to be decent for the first half of the season and waiting for Kyrie, to a guy who's, now just a veteran who is coming off the bench and not playing enough minutes, not shooting the ball well. So why, there's no upside there with D'Lo. He has not looked good. He's not played all that well outside of a few games, and he's definitely trending down. So I'm fine cutting D'Angelo Russell. Last two guys are not very highly owned. Jake LaRavia, now that the Lakers are getting healthy, easy cut. His performance has disappeared. LeBron James is coming back perhaps in the next week, and that'll really be the final nail in his coffin. But nice little run for LaRavia when we had injuries with the Lakers, but at that time is over. And the last guy is Josh Manoa, who again, I was like everyone else chasing those first couple big games with Boston, but since then his game log is all over the place. One decent game, 8 minutes the next game, 20 minutes the next game. Boston really doesn't care. They're not trying to develop him or play him. They're just plugging guys in every night, and his minutes show that he's not a priority for them. So I'm fine dropping him. He might pop up again with a good game. I wouldn't be surprised if out of nowhere he has a 15 and 10 game or something. But he's been way too inconsistent and hard to predict to really rely on having him on your team or even stream him, because you pick him up to stream him and you think, hey, I'm getting 25 minutes tonight, and he plays 10 or something. Like, it's been weird with the way that Boston has utilized him. I like him as a player. I think he's got some upside, but clearly Boston hasn't have a real big plan for him. That they're just using him as a stopgap, playing him here and there, just using a very fluid rotation with a lot of players. And yeah, there's no upside there with Josh Manoa for me. All right, here's where we get to the final segment, and yeah, we're going to keep it under 25, maybe 30 minutes today. That's my goal every week, to give you guys a quick rundown. Don't drop these dudes. So again, these are players who I would exercise more patience with, and I'm getting a lot of questions about Naz Reid, and I mentioned him last week. Guys, I know it's hard to sit through like some 10-5 games, some 12-4 games, and stuff like that. But Naz Reid is a good fantasy player. He's still giving you steals and blocks. He's playing on a good team. I know his minutes are down and perhaps his role's a little reduced. I'm not cutting Naz Reid. I'm hanging on. That's the thing. Even at his worst, at his lowest, right? He's still a top 150 player, right? So if you're in a 12-team league, let me just clarify here. If you're in a 12-team league, hold Naz Reid. If you're in a 10-team league, right, and you really have to have ultra productive players everywhere, I understand. That's a whole different ball of wax. This show is really intended for 12-team leagues, and you have to adjust accordingly, right? I get questions all the time about 18 leagues. Guys, if you're in an 18 league, right, come on. It's not even a very good question. Should I keep Naz Reid versus this guy? You could justify cutting a bunch of really good players in 18 leagues. All right. We're talking 10 and 12 and leagues, man leagues and bigger. And so 12-man leagues, I'm holding Naz Reid. There's upside there. He does what not a lot of big guys can do in terms of threes, steals, blocks. I like Naz. I'm holding. Christian Brown also got hurt in last night's game for Denver. He has not been nearly as bad as Cam Johnson, but he hasn't been as good as we were hoping either. His shooting has come back down to earth a little bit. And of course, he was never a guy who relied on volume in the first place. He was relying on efficiency. So he has not performed up to expectations, but I think as long as his injury is not serious, he's going to be just fine. He's already got that experience playing with Jokic and playing in that rotation that Cam didn't. I think he'll be just fine. I would hold on to Christian Brown. Again, the numbers don't pop off the screen, but in 9-cat, and Roto, he's a great player on the wing, and I think he'll be just fine. The last guy, and it's tough to do it after last night's box score, but John Collins, I have a hard time, especially with Bradley Beal being rolled out for the season. I'm glad we got out from under that, right? Bradley Beal was in week 1 cut, and I mentioned him last week again. Like, why are we holding this guy? And sure enough, there he is, like an old man, broke his hip out for the year. John Collins has some opportunity potentially there. It is a bit of a red flag that he hasn't done much with Kawhi out, but at the same time, the Clippers have been all over the place. They've been blown out a few times too, which is what happened last night against Denver. John Collins still, I mentioned it. I've said it a few times. His game is made for 9-cat. Even if he can settle into a 25 to 20-minute role off the bench or as a starter and give you 12, 6, and 1.5 blocks and steals, something like that, he's still in 12-team leagues, the worst guy on the end of your bench, worth keeping. I don't see a lot of upside there with Collins by any means, but my point is, even at his worst, look similar to Nasri, even at his worst, if he's getting minutes, he's probably productive enough to hold on to in those size leagues. All right, gang, that's all I have for this week. Just want to, make sure everybody knows where they can find me. I'm at Thunder Dan DFS, and you can always check me out there. There's a link to my Substack there if you guys like betting content or DFS content. I'm doing some of that over at Rotoballer. And more than anything, make sure you are liking and subscribing these videos. Check out all the other great content here at the Old Man Fantasy Sports Network from all the guys here. We just have an amazing collection of NBA writers who are doing content right now. It's a really cool thing that Dan's built here. So check everybody out and keep coming back for all this content. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next week.